Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf.
Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy.
As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired.
Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl. Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
They'll challenge your authority because that's what kids do. But this car is your territory. And in here, your word is law. So when you say you won't move until everyone's buckled up, you won't budge an inch until you hear that click. Never give up until they buckle up. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. For more information, visit safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lulia. Clear tonight with a low of 26. Then clouds move in Wednesday with a high of 42. For more than 40 years, the Great Wall Restaurant has been serving up Szechuan and Mandarin favorites. The Great Wall is located just north of 50th in France on the Minneapolis-Edina City line. Check them out at greatwallrestaurant.us.
Good day to be indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Couldn't cut, hit me cut again.
Because all the hippies are trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings that wounded me.
I am awake.
Welcome to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade. Hey, Kadagi to all my friends and relatives in four directions. You are listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot, and we discuss local and national Native news and events. And as you know, Wendy, Native issues are human issues, and human issues are Native issues.
This portion of the show is supported by the Native American Community Development Institute in Minneapolis.
Hey, we're going to get with John here in a minute, but first we want to play a quick update from Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. Welcome, Lieutenant Governor.
Anine, this is Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, and I'm joining Native Roots Radio with an update from the Walz-Flanagan administration. Last week, the February forecast showed that Minnesota's economy is strong and stable, thanks to the hard work of working families and small businesses across our state. And the legislature continues to be incredibly productive on legislation that improves the lives of all Minnesotans. Also, the governor and I have the honor of appointing incredibly qualified and driven individuals as commissioners to lead our cabinet agencies. To date, the Minnesota Senate has confirmed 13 of our commissioner appointments. These include Department of Administration Commissioner Alice Roberts Davis, Department of Agriculture Commissioner Tom Peterson, Department of Commerce Commissioner Grace Arnold, Department of Education Commissioner Willie Jett, Office of Higher Education Commissioner and Fond du Lac Tribal Member Dennis Olson, Department of Human Rights Commissioner Rebecca Lucero, Department of Labor and Industry Commissioner Nicole Blissenbach, Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation Board Commissioner Ida Rukavina, Minnesota Management and Budget Commissioner Jim Showalter, MINIT, or the Minnesota IT Department Commissioner Tarek Tomes, Department of Revenue Commissioner Paul Marquardt, Department of Transportation Commissioner Nancy Dobbenberger, and Department of Veteran Affairs Commissioner Larry Herkey. These are all highly qualified and committed public servants who the governor and I rely on to lead the work of state government. We're grateful to these Minnesota senators for getting these confirmations done so quickly in this term. Last time I talked about two extremely important bills that had just passed the Senate, Restore the Vote and Driver's Licenses for All. The governor has signed both of those bills into law. The celebrations at these bill signings were incredibly moving and powerful, and just a great reminder of all of the work that has been done over decades to make this legislative session possible. People kept the faith, and now we're getting it done. Additionally, the governor has signed several other bills, including providing $5 million in emergency funding to food shelves to help more Minnesotans in need put food on the table. And incidentally, that was a bill that was introduced by Representative Heather Keeler, who's a member of the Native American Caucus. He also has signed a bill tying the budget forecast to inflation to make sure that we can keep up with the costs for Minnesotans. He's authorized the DNR to make changes to improve Minnesota's state park and recreation area boundaries and properly transfer Minnesota county and state lands. And the governor has also signed a bill unlocking $315.5 million in federally appropriated funds from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act to improve our Minnesota roads. And boy, don't we need it right now. And then finally, the governor signed Executive Order 2303, which protects the rights of LGBTQ plus Minnesotans to seek and receive gender affirming care. And with this executive order, we are saying to our trans loved ones, to our friends, to our neighbors, and fellow Minnesotans that you belong here. You are safe here. We want you to live the fullest, truest, happiest version of your life and to be yourself here in our community. We were joined by medical professionals and elected officials, the Queer Caucus, community members who are all saying the same thing. Because let's be clear, this is life-affirming and life-saving healthcare. When our children tell us who they are, it's our job as grown-ups to listen and to believe them. And when our friends and neighbors tell us that this is critical care that will help them feel safer and happier and more themselves, it's our job to listen and to believe them. And when our medical professionals tell us this care will help improve and save lives of their patients, it is our job to listen and to believe them. In Minnesota, our trans, non-binary, two-spirit, gender-expansive relatives are seen and heard and valued and protected and loved for who they are. That is what it means to be a good neighbor, and I think that's what it means to be a Minnesotan. While there are bullies across this country who may be attacking the community, here in Minnesota, we are going to stand up for our trans relatives. There's more work that we can do to protect and support trans youth and adults, but I look forward to continuing that work in partnership with fierce advocates like Representative Lee Finke and with the community. So we continue to work hard. I'm going to keep sending you updates. I appreciate this opportunity to share with you what's happened down at the Capitol. Chimigwech, Pinagigi, and back to you.
Wow, Wendy, just awesome to hear the Lieutenant Governor.
Always. I'm glad that she's on all the time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Every other week she's drops in with a nice segment. But hey, we got John Williams, Director of Development for Native American Community Development on now. And we're really excited to have you on, John. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Robert. I'm honored to be here.
You know, it was funny. The last time you were on, I was listening to the show because, I was critiquing it. And I got to just say this, you were worked with the Valley of the Dolls.
Valley of the Dolls, yeah.
Right. And that blew my mind because a friend of mine was in that I went to high school with, Julie Tavine. I don't know if you remember that name.
Julia. We love Julie.
Yeah, Julia, for sure. She was awesome. I went to high school and junior high with her.
You're bringing me back 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it was great.
Small world.
It is. Yeah, I lived in Minneapolis for 16 years. Yeah, 16 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
It was really different back then because wasn't that like towards mid 80s?
Late 80s and the 90s.
Okay, yeah. The early 80s early 80s were kind of a fog to me, if you know what I mean, but I'm recovering. I'm on my way.
It was the late 80s that were foggy for me, so I'm with you.
Right on. Hey, so that's you're stepping in here for Robert Lilligren. Let's get an update of what would you like to talk about?
Well, we have so much going on at NACD, but I was thinking it was snowing all day here today. I live in Marshall. I don't know if you knew that, Robert. I commute between the cities in Marshall, Minnesota. So I'm in southwestern Minnesota. But I was thinking that spring is like 10 days away.
Not really. Outside.
We're on our third winter.
The hope of spring is in a week. No, so I don't know. Do you know about our urban farm, Robert?
No, let's hear about it, because I hear a little bit about it, but that'd be great to.
Well, yeah, so many people know that we have a farmers market. We've been doing that for 9 years. And everybody loves it. The community comes out. We have vendors. We've got educational tables. It's just a lot of fun from June until October every year. But in the past 3 years, Hennepin County Railroad Authority has leased 3 plots of land in East Phillips neighborhood on 29th Street on the Greenway between Bloomington and 18th Avenue. So we have 3 plots of land that we got for a lease that is like $1 a year.
Wow.
And our goal with those 3 plots of land is it's our food sovereignty work, where we want to treat the land with no pesticides and honor our traditional ways of growing. The 3 different plots will be 3 different types of gardens. So we've started with a traditional farming garden or backyard garden, and we have 22 raised beds. And a lot of this infrastructure, Robert, was paid for by Midtown Community Works. They really wanted to see us, and the East Phillips neighborhood is really supportive. The Epic group is really supportive of this work.
Yeah, let's talk more about that in the next segment. You got time we got to take a quick break here, but we want to talk more about that, and we want some seeds over here in St. Paul. Oh, wow. Hey, you're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and we'll be right back after this short break.
Stay with us.
Oh, wow. I heard sex trafficking happens a lot in Indian country. What is that?
Here are some of the real reasons why sex trafficking happens in Indian country. Unequal gender roles that were forced on us by colonization. Communities don't have enough resources. Silence around domestic and sexual violence. Lack of attention and justice for missing and murdered Indigenous people. There's a lot of behavior that keeps our communities out of balance. These are just a few true reasons why Native communities are targeted by traffickers. When these acts of violence happen in our communities, it opens us all up for exploitation.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
The Senior Linkage Line is a free, statewide service of the Minnesota Board on Aging, helping older Minnesotans and caregivers find answers and connect to services and supports. Questions about Medicare, transportation, looking to move to senior housing, overwhelmed with prescription drug plans? Call the Senior Linkage Line at 800-333-2433 or visit trellisconnects.org, where we help people optimize well-being as they age. That's trellisconnects.org.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
When we heal from our traumas,
When we face our fears,
let go of our addictions,
when we relearn our values,
when we live our teachings,
respecting our elders,
cherishing and honoring our children,
when we honor and take care of our spirit,
there will be no room left for sexual violence.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Hey, welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is supported by MN350, a grassroots organization fighting for climate justice.
Yes, they are. Hey, Wendy, we talk about politics all the time, and one of the most important things that we do talk about, not that we're important, but we do talk about important things, is that it's really things happen in the local, your local politicians. Of course, we want to vote in the presidential and all that, but grassroots and things that happen are local politicians.
Our local politics are very, very important, and it's important for everyone to get involved.
Well, with that in mind, we have a guest here, Isaac Russell, who's running for Ward 3 here in St. Paul, and that's
City Council.
Thank you, Wendy. And So it's important for us to amplify these progressive voices and talk about issues and who people are. And so, Isaac, we're really happy to have you on, and welcome to Native Roots Radio.
No, it's my honor. Thank you for having me on. I'm familiar with Native Roots, and I've heard your names about because I've been active in politics for some years. So no, it's my pleasure to join you today.
Appreciate that. We always ask too where people hear of us too, because we run around, and Wendy's kind of a celebrity, and people are always asking about her, and it's like, wow, what about me? But hey, so we have Chris Tolbert, who's not running for re-election, who's been a friend of ours and in policy.
He's become a friend of ours. We got involved with politics, and we consider Chris Tolbert our friend.
Yeah, and with policy and friendship too. And he's been to our home studio here and held the dog on the lap, and that was a big thing before COVID.
We have pictures, yes.
Yeah. So hopefully someday, Isaac, if things work out, you can come on over and do that too, seeing that we're neighbors. But let's talk about your candidacy. What are we running on, and what's your experience?
No, first of all, again, thank you. But and yeah, I would look forward to holding the dog on the lap. And actually, I just got a text from my mom, and my mom also has listened to both of you in the past. But yeah, no, it's campaigns are really about making sure you represent people, right? The priorities of any individual who hopes to represent anyone, it should be the priorities of the people. The conversations that they're having with people, what is important to them. So, that's an essential point to, our representative system. So in terms of, experience, for me, it's the personal experience and then also professional experience, but the two are very much linked. My personal experience, I was born in St. Paul, but I had a lot of housing instability. I lived in 35 different places by the time I was 15. Unfortunately, including a homeless shelter on Wabasha across the street from where I work. So this was my experience living on social benefit programs. I was on Section 8. I was on MFIP. I was on, SNAP or the welfare back when food stamps back when it was the funny money, when everyone knew that's what you were using when you were at the store. And the embarrassment that came with that. I've eaten at the Dorothy Day. I have this set of experiences. But what helped bring me out of that, what helped give me opportunities, was support of the community. It was progressive legislation that had been passed before I was ever born, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went to college on Pell Grants. It was that Section 8 voucher that allowed me to move into affordable housing. It was having experience in a community in which individuals said, you know what, your future matters. So despite the fact, for instance, for a period of time, I lived with my grandparents, and they're on fixed income, but they said, we're going to vote for this levy increase because we think it's the right thing to do. I'm going to football games, and there's my friends' parents serving meals. I see roads being repaired. I have the neighbors saying, hey, behave yourself when you're out there, because I'm going to go tell your grandparents, I'm going to go tell your mom, which of course there was nothing to report.
I'm sure of it.
But all of that got me very much interested in politics and public policy, and how do we provide the supports necessary for opportunities for youth, opportunities for families. So, I got my education in political science and history, and I did it going to the Century, going to get my AA there while working on a shipping dock. Went out to River Falls, got a double major in political science and history there. Was working, on doing an industrial flooring job, and just volunteered for a campaign because I still wanted to do public service. So I served in the Senate, Minnesota Senate, for 9 years. Wow. As a legislative assistant, including some time working for the assistant minority leader and then the minority leader of the Senate Democrats. Went back and got my master's in public policy from the Humphrey, became the first person, on my father's side to have an advanced degree, and the first person to graduate from a 4-year college with a degree. And since then, actually, I have moved on to the Center for Economic Inclusion, where I work as their director of public policy. So how can we pass this sort of legislation to create an inclusive economy What are the systemic solutions to overcome the systemic inequities that we see in our Black community, in our Indigenous community, in our Asian communities, in our Latinx communities? How do we provide these opportunities? So this is really, for me, City Council is an opportunity to marry my personal experience of knowing you have to deliver for families because there's someone that needs that, with my professional experience to say, hey, this is how you do this work. So, I would say that that's why I'm running, and that's also, I would say my qualifications, as it were.
Wow, that's awesome too. And I know our districts changed too, which is made it more diversified, which is a good thing. And with your discussion about that, I'm a former high school teacher, and I know policies, schools, housing, these things that I worked with or saw happening to my students in an inner city school really affected them. What is you have a lot of background in that. What can you do and how can you help our local kids?
So, I mean, there's a multitude of things that, a city council member can do. Part of it is just how do you carry yourself in every day? Part of it is advocating for different levels of government, because this is an all hands on deck challenge that we have to make sure that our students are supported and that they have the opportunities to do what I did, and I'm someone that, I bet my story is very similar to the students that you've had. I was, when I was 15, actually, I was living not in a homeless shelter, but I was living in a roach infested hotel because the bottom really fell out of my family. I had a 0.7 GPA my freshman year in high school. I was angry, right? And it was it was an anger that wasn't directed at any one thing, but it was the acknowledgement that, things just kind of suck.
Right.
I go up on the lunch line and someone snatches my lunch away because the free lunch paperwork hadn't come through. Right.
Yeah.
So, I had gotten into some trouble at school, and had been suspended, these sorts of things. But guess what? My mom's at work. Right. So I'm at home. She's lucky that I was the type of person who, okay, I'm actually going to be at home. But sometimes that's not the case for a lot of folks. So the supports that we can provide when we go back to, when we go to these schools, first of all, how can we support our families?
Right.
What are the things that they need? I've spoken with principals at, our schools, and that's what they're saying. Children are bringing the challenges that they have at home to school, and it's manifesting them in ways that they're getting into fights. And then you talk to the child afterwards, and the child is remorseful. They're sad.
Right.
But this is the world they're in. So the supports that we can do are looking for how we can support our families. And that runs the gamut from looking at how do we make sure that they're able to find employment. If they're on social benefit programs, how do we avoid things such as the benefits cliff, which is, a whole, sort of policy thing that I am working on as part of my work at the center. Also, how can we fund our schools, including making sure that schools that have a difficult time raising the money that they need from levies, how can we give them the funding that they need, from the city level so that they can provide resources and opportunities? Culturally inclusive curriculum that acknowledges the fact that we are diverse and we're becoming more diverse. And so that has to be reflected in the way that we educate not just our students of color, but also their white counterparts.
Right.
I have 2 white stepsons, and I'm very happy to see when they come home and they tell me something about Martin Luther King that's not just I had a dream speech.
Right.
My son was talking to me about the People's Campaign that he had. Like,
Yeah.
okay, tell me more about that. So, these are the sort of things that we need to do, but then we also need to make sure that we're providing opportunities. One of the things that I would hope to do if I'm lucky enough to represent my neighbors is providing, for instance, an internship pathway pipeline through the city council office. So we can teach our youth, these are the professional skills you need. These are the issues going on in your community. And let's provide you an opportunity. I also would like to use this position as the ability to bring awareness and raise funds for a scholarship for youth in our area. It won't be enough to pay for the skyrocketing cost of school, but something to say that we're invested in your future and we care. So that's the personal, but then also I think the professional things we need to do. And obviously school safety is fundamental to that also.
Right on. And it's interesting when you were talking, and we're going to take a quick break here in about a minute, but when you were talking, I think it reminds me of Wendy and my story. I was a late bloomer. I mean, I did, you know, I was a kid of the 60s and a student in the 70s, but here we are. And so there's different degrees of speed, and, you know, our kids, you know, we can't compare our kids a lot of times to the suburban kids because they're figuring out where they're going to live that night. And, you know, how can we compare those scores? It's such apples and oranges. But hey, we're going to be right back. And we're here with Isaac Russell. He's running for Ward 3 here in St. Paul for City Council. And we'll be right back after this short break.
Stay with us.
I meant to say short break. Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States.
And 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected.
Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf.
Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy.
As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired.
Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
Why must the world be so cold? They've gone against what was told. Thinking rape is cool? Think about it. They think it's not wrong. Violence against women, the rape, the abuse, the emotional, physical, they all hold the hate. Think about it. Is it right or wrong? What attracts you? I'm not saying no names, but you laugh. Talk about it like nothing is wrong. Think about it. They all hold the hate. Gotta stop the violence. Stop the hate. Think about it.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Sexual abuse has hurt our Native people. It's still hurting them. My cousin was raped when she was 13, and 2 months later she found out she was pregnant. Now she is hurt because her baby has no dad. We have to stop sexual abuse against Native women and girls. We shouldn't have to experience sexual violence. Work with us to stop this abuse. That's not too much to ask for, is it?
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
This is Santita Jackson. Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 a.m. Central, we'll bring you the best progressive talkers, thinkers, and doers on AM 950, Minnesota's progressive voice.
We're facing into some of the greatest challenges the world has faced in decades. How do we address this great transformation in how we deal with land, how we engage with people, how we produce enough food but produce it just and regeneratively? And how do we do that at a time of social, economic, and climatic emergency?
Attend the Regenerative Agriculture and Food Systems Summit in Chicago on March 28th and 29th. This summit brings together farmers, food and beverage brands, and stakeholders with one unified mission: to accelerate the transition to regenerative agriculture. Together, we can build a more abundant and resilient food system for generations to come. For more information, go to Regenerative Agriculture Summit USA. Enter the code FOODFREEDOM10 for a 10% discount. That's 10% off with Food Freedom 10.
No matter if you're eating out or cooking something at home, EatLocalMinnesota.com has you covered with a list of locally owned restaurants and food purveyors. Locally owned Vinaigrette has been offering the finest olive oil and vinegar since 2009. Reintroduce yourself to all the many flavors by tasting before you buy. From darker white balsamic to cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil from all over the world, there is something for everyone. Vinaigrette, located at 50th and Xerxes in Minneapolis, or at vinaigrettemn.com. The Park Tavern is your go-to destination for fun. Enjoy the fantastic food like their pizzas, burgers, and sandwiches, the best bowling in Minnesota, their wildly popular outdoor patio, great drink specials, all the big games on their numerous screens, and it's the perfect place for your next private event, even large gatherings for over 200. The Park Tavern is your go-to destination for everyone. Have fun at the Park Tavern, Louisiana Avenue, north of Highway 7 in St. Louis Park.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Clear tonight with a low of 26. Then clouds move in Wednesday with a high of 42. The Electric Fetus is having a pre-inventory store-wide sale now through Sunday. Take 20% off almost everything in the store. The Electric Fetus is located at 2000 South 4th Avenue in Minneapolis. More information at electricfetus.com.
Hey, welcome back to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is supported by the Native American Community Clinic on Franklin Avenue in Minneapolis,
Hey,
honoring health and tradition.
Sorry to talk over you. That's a nice tagline too, and I think you came up with that tagline, Wendy. So thank you so much. Hey, we're here with Isaac Russell, who's running for City Council here in Ward 3 in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's really important for us to talk to politicians that are local. You know, because I think things happen locally. So welcome back. And really, we want to, Isaac, we want you to be able to give out your email, or not your email, but your website, and how people can support you. And we want to do that a couple more times before the segment's over.
Absolutely. So thanks for that opportunity. You know, we're having the precinct caucuses are coming up on March 19th, next Sunday, start at 1 o'clock. Ours will be at the Highland High. So one way, you know, to support me would be showing up to precinct caucuses and being selected as a delegate to our ward convention. Ward convention will be on April 30th. I believe that will be at Central. You know, we have all the information, and you can reach out and get that information from us at isaacforcitycouncil.com. Also, you can find us Facebook, Instagram at Isaac for City Council, trying to keep it simple. And then also Twitter at Isaac for Ward 3. So yeah, that would be an excellent way is showing up at precinct caucuses and, you know, becoming a delegate and then voting for our campaign for the endorsement at the convention.
Well, that's exciting. We just touched a little bit on housing and in our last segment, but also how diverse St. Paul and even McAllister, Groveland, and Highland here is becoming, and that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So, you know, one of the things that, you know, I think about where I've been in life is that it touches on a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And it allows me to form connections with people and find ways forward, right, to overcome, you know, the bridges that oftentimes divide us. You know, our population in Ward 3 is diversifying, right? You know, first, you know, amongst our white population, we are having newer families, younger families that are coming in, and they're having the sort of struggles trying to find homes that are affordable for first-time home buyers. You know, that is something that, you know, was a challenge for myself. You know, I didn't buy my first home until well into my 30s. That sort of $250,000 to $300,000 starter home that allows people to purchase a home and generate wealth that can pass on to their children, it's increasingly difficult. We have 27,000 households in this state that can afford a home, but the stock is just not available because the fundamental challenge that we are having in terms of housing opportunities, affordable housing that's affordable, is the lack of actual housing, right? So that's one way that it manifests. We also have a lot of folks, new Americans, so our Oromo, Ethiopian, Somali folks who are moving into the area. I'm lucky enough to live very close on West 7th. My father actually lives in the ward, and he's been here for a long time, but he is also someone who's had some health challenges, and he's on Section 8, and he lives on the Davin Park apartments on St. Paul Avenue. You know, and so I've taken care of him for years. And so the struggles for a lot of folks in that situation is making sure that they have affordable housing, right? We are in this city over 11,000 units short for affordable housing. To subsidize and incentivize the construction of all of that is about $300,000 per unit. We're talking billions of dollars across the metro to build all the affordable units we need. $13.5 billion. You can over double that to get what we need for the state. So the fundamental challenge is housing. We're going to have to look at innovative ways that we can fund housing. We're going to have to work with folks at the federal level and at the state level so that we're able to generate the revenue we need. I currently, through my work, am working with the Minnesota Housing Partnership on an amendment that would dedicate revenue to the construction of affordable housing. It would also help with home ownership purchasing. That's one of the biggest inequities, racial inequities that we see in our communities, you know, especially for Black, it really amplified for our indigenous communities, is the lack of housing that gives them generational wealth. And so the wealth accumulation, all of these things just are not there, and as for me, as someone who, obviously, my father was Black, but my mother was is a member, an elder in the Ottawa Native tribe, and my grandmother hails from a village in Michigan, right? There was nothing there for them to generate wealth. It actually came from what my grandmother was able to do with her husband, who was a white man. So when we take a look at this housing and what was being able to stabilize, generate wealth, my living situation was stabilized because I was living with my grandparents and they had a home.
Right.
So, I mean, this is a foundational problem for us all.
Yeah, it really, really is. And I think talking, being aware of that is half the battle. And I think, especially with the houses going, unbelievably high, it's just one of the things for our generation was we'd live longer than our parents, and we'd have housing, which, as you said, is our wealth that you can borrow against. That's not only generational wealth, that's personal wealth, and it's out of the ballpark for our kids and their kids.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And one of the biggest issues too that came with a lot of folks is, having that equity in the home is great. For a lot of folks, they had lost homes and they had that equity stripped out in the financial crisis. So even we need to make sure, do what we can, that the rules are just fair kind of across the board. My grandparents lost their home in 2008, because they had rolled their debt. They had done what everyone told them to do. And all of a sudden now they can't afford that mortgage. We are still just trying to recover from the effects of that. But in terms of housing, the fundamental issue again is making sure that we're constructing enough housing, and we're going to have to work with all stakeholders involved. We're going to have to work with developers, federal government, state government. What can the city do? There's also options to address this through our zoning laws. We can legalize different types of units so we can get the sort of multi-use that cities once were, but intentionally were created one way. And we know why: exclusionary zoning policy. So, the city, for instance, has a very interesting study that was just produced that looks at consolidating some of our residential classifications. But most importantly, it's trying to provide options for new types of housing for folks. So, I mean, this is going to be, again, I keep saying all hands on deck because that's truly what it is. No one solution is going to solve all of this.
Exactly. I want to just switch gears real quick. And when I was young, you had to work in public schools. You had to live in St. Paul. If you were a police officer, you had to live in St. Paul and, in the city. And I think what happened was it ended up finding out that it was unconstitutional. So we have our officers and our teachers that don't live in the city. So it's hard for them to buy in psychologically, I think, to what's going on. 99% of the police are good. And how do we vet out the bad? And also, how do we support our neighborhoods with crime? And where are you at with that, Isaac?
So, this is a fundamental thing that affects us all, but affects us all differently. And so I think we have to acknowledge the struggles that are in one area necessarily aren't the struggles in another area. So how can we be supportive of the different initiatives that we need to provide what I like to call truly comprehensive public safety? So that comprehensive public safety should really take two forms. The first form is really, how do we keep people safe in real time? This includes, how do we keep our schools safe in real time? Part of it, obviously, is going to be, okay, we need the presence of officers, but how do we embed them in communities and give them ways, incentivize them to form relationships that's necessary for trust? In areas in which there's high trust between law enforcement and the community, they are much more effective at their job. But we need to acknowledge that there are certain communities in which that's just not true. And so what are the ways we can be supportive, right? Highland, McAllister, Groveland, West 7th area that we have, we're lucky to, on average, have a higher level of trust and have a better relationship with law enforcement. But what do we need to do to support other areas so they can get to where we're at? Because being safe and secure for those folks matters just as much for us. And if they're not, then we're not. So part of that is looking at community models for policing, but then also there's this other aspect, and that aspect is investing in people, and investing in people in terms of obviously giving them resources so that they're able to make ends meet, but providing them opportunities so that they can get the education that they need, so that they can have the constructive activities that allows them to grow, so that they can form relationships not only with law enforcement, but with their neighbors, so that that community sense gets brought out. Also, what's the sort of cultural sensitivity, the cultural training, the cultural knowledge needed by law enforcement to allow them to effectively form relationships and move throughout these communities? And part of that's going to be working with leaders. I think also one of the things that we need to look at too, in terms of public safety, is how do we provide opportunities specifically for male youth, right? Mm-hmm. We have seen COVID exacerbate some of the challenges already in this community. So I think what we need to do is we need to meet youth and where they're at, provide them investments, provide them mentorship. Do not take a strictly punitive model that seeks to punish them while providing them no opportunities, because you're not acknowledging the struggles that they have. So really, that's how I approach it. It's, yes, we need to stay safe in real time, but the biggest thing is there's an opportunity to invest in our youth.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. Hey, we got like less than a minute left here. I want to give you the floor, but I also want to say, Isaac, for citycouncil.com and on Instagram, Isaac for City Council on Facebook and Instagram. So you got a minute, less than a minute. Really, just thank you so much for coming on. And I'm going to give you the floor here in the last 30 seconds.
No, the thanks is all on my end. Thank you so much. It's great to speak with you here. And you know what I want to say is I want to represent people the way they deserve to be represented. And I understand you got to talk to all folks involved. I understand you have to do the difficult thing when it's hard to do it. I'm willing to do that. But most importantly, for me to be effective, I need to hear what's important to everyone else. So please contact me, get a hold of me, tell me what's important to you. Thank you so much for allowing me on.
Wow, thank you so much. You're listening.
Thank you, Isaac. I'll be being in touch with you.
Wendy will be calling you. Hey, thank you so much. You're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and we'll be back after this short break.
Stay with us. Hey, Olgama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Boost your immunity and help protect your community. COVID-19 is still here, but it's not too late to get your booster. Staying up to date with vaccines can help build protection that has decreased since your last shot and provide better protection against newer variants. Boosters are an important part of protecting yourself from getting seriously ill from COVID-19. To learn more and schedule your appointment, visit ramseycounty.us/COVID vaccine. ramseycounty.us/COVID vaccine.
J&S Bean Factory is a native-owned, community-supported, cozy, artsy coffee shop which offers roasted on-site beans, live music, and baked goods. Relax in the beautiful outside patio. City Pages writes, voted top 10 coffee shops. Tucked into a quiet corner of St. Paul's Highland Park neighborhood, this coffee shop roasts beans on-site from the best coffee-growing countries in the world. Located at 1518 Randolph Avenue, St. Paul. The good stuff.
For years, my father sexually abused me. For years, I abused alcohol and drugs to stop the hurt and rage. For years, I was afraid I would become a perpetrator just like him. I'm sober now. I've received help to recover from sexual abuse. I rely on our pipe, our ceremonies, and our culture. For the rest of my life, I'll be learning how to live with my past, because overcoming the abuse of my childhood has made me the strong man that I am today. As men in our Indian communities, we must hold each other accountable and overcome our own past of sexual abuse so that we can break this cycle.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Hey, welcome back to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is supported by Howling for Wolves, protecting wolves for future generations.
How? Okay, Wendy, the pressure's on. We've had a great show here, and we're talking about our sacred animals, which I like to say family, and they are our relatives, and me as a Native person, and a lot of people out there like yourself really respect that they are family and they are beings. So you've been on the show for 7 years, and we've been learning so much about our relatives. So again, thank you for coming on and sharing your experience, strength, and hope.
Thank you, Robert. My name is Hanaji Hihani, and I was given that name by my Dega Curtis. Curtis goes by Mashke Hanajinga, which means walks on white clouds. I'm a humane policy volunteer leader for the Humane Society of the United States, and I work on animal issues at the local and state level, and it's always my pleasure to do so. Yeah, so today I wanted to kind of mix it up, have a fun day, a lot of light stuff. We talk about our sacred animals, which a lot of people would say, like, we talk about like wolves and bears and turtles and eagles and elk and deer and all of those animals, you think of a more like a Native American type of feeling. But we talk about all our animals. We talk about elephants and elephants and frogs
Our
and
dogs,
all kinds
and
of things.
lions and tigers and bears. Oh my!
I know. So I have this website, and it's 300 amazing facts about animals, and we started from the bottom. We started from 300. Working our way up to number 1, and I think we left off at 246 the last time. So these are just fun facts about animals.
Quiz me.
It's really fun. Female eagles are 25% larger than the males.
Wow.
I think I talked about that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But we get new listeners all the time, so pretend you didn't.
Yeah, I know. Dog nose prints are as unique as human fingerprints and can be used to identify them.
Nose prints?
Yeah, they're nose prints.
Okay.
Yeah, they
All
have
right.
nose prints, babe.
So you put a little ink on their nose and then rub it in a piece of paper, and wow, okay.
Yes, you could. I mean, they have paw prints too. I wonder, maybe it's smooth on there and the paw prints they don't have.
We could do a whole show on that. So let's write that one down.
I don't know if I'm saying this right, but it's ichthyphobia is a fear of fish.
Oh.
I know somebody who has a fear of fish.
I can see how they're pretty prehistoric looking when you look at them.
Kind of slimy too.
And wiggly.
Allurophobia. I don't know if I'm saying that right either. Is a fear of cats.
Oh.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who don't like. Well, you know what? I think people who don't like cats, or
pretend
maybe
they're allergic.
Yes, they do. They pretend they're allergic.
Some are. Don't get us wrong or sue Wendy, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get sued. I just lost my space here. Oh, here we go. You know how when you touch the bottom of your phone, it goes all the way up to the top?
We've had family members that have said they're allergic to dogs and to cats, and then years later they have them, and you kind of go, I think they were pulling your leg because they wanted more attention. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like,
exactly.
Come on.
You know what a baby goat is called, right?
A goat tie? A goatee? No, that's
a baby goat.
Oh, okay.
Is called a kid.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it was called a baby goat, but yeah, Billy the Kid.
A female goat is called a doe or a nanny.
A
nanny goat, right? You have heard somebody say a nanny goat?
Nope.
That's a female goat. A male goat is called a buck or a billy.
Yeah.
Billy goat. Billy goat and a nanny goat. That's a male and a female goat.
Yeah.
Listen to this one. I really like this one. I think I've mentioned this one on the radio before.
But we have new listeners, so
Yeah. Cows from different areas have different moo accents.
kind of like your New York accent and my Minnesota accent. Right?
I know. There are over 2,700 types of snakes in the world, and they live in deserts, forests, oceans, streams, and lakes.
Well, like let's back up to that one again. So would you moo like from New York, you would moo like
moo.
No, you'd go, forget about moo. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
The United States has the highest dog population in the world. France has the second highest. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, because we have so many animals in shelters right now. So I will say this, please adopt, do not shop.
Exactly.
We have the highest dog population in the world. That's crazy. I don't know. They're talking a lot about goats here.
This is the goat section.
I know. I don't know if I want to read this one, but goats were the first animals to be used for milk by humans.
Ick. All right.
I know. Isn't that gross? I don't know. I don't drink cow's milk either, so I think that's for cow babies.
Oat milk, which is made from baby oats.
There are estimated to be 400 million dogs in the world. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I know. And according to records, there are 50 million monkeys in the world. I always wanted a monkey when I was a kid.
I know.
A chimpanzee.
Now it's like, forget it. But
Yeah,
back then in the 60s, there was a lot of that going on.
Yeah. Those poor animals.
I know. They're pissed and they were throwing poop at people.
Yeah,
They were so
exactly.
mad.
The oldest recorded elephant lived for 82 years.
Wow.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Wow.
You
Well, you
know?
figure they get somebody maybe 20, 30 years old captures this elephant and the elephant outlives them like by a lot of years.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy to think about that?
Right. Well, people get these birds that last, they live 70 years too. So they, again, and turtles too that last
Long time.
Yeah.
Mine
know.
always died with a soft shell.
A unicorn.
That's not a real thing.
Well, it says here a herd of unicorns is called a blessing. I know they're not a real thing. But here it says number 232, a herd of unicorns is called a blessing.
With fairy dust?
I don't know. I guess so. Really? That's why I asked you what a unicorn was, because I thought maybe I was thinking of something different. I don't know.
I can't stop laughing. Okay, so this is the fiction part of our show.
The color red
unicorn
doesn't really make bulls angry. They are colorblind.
I know what makes them angry is a damn knife in their back.
Exactly. And being in a arena with a stupid man waving a cloth in front of their face. Okay,
with super tight pants.
Exactly. Well, you know what? They've been banning bullfighting around the world. It's being banned. It will be, hopefully, in our lifetime, maybe a thing of the past.
All I have to say is thank goodness for Gen Z. They don't stand for that.
I
stuff.
know.
That's
Go
so
Gen
cool.
Zs. Yeah. It costs approximately $10,000 to train a federally certified search and rescue dog. And you know what? These dogs are amazing. They go into disaster zones and help and rescue people. Yeah.
I know. It was so sad during 9/11.
Yes.
They had to find people just so the dogs wouldn't get depressed. You've talked about that.
Yeah, the dogs would go in and they couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Do I have time for one more?
Hopefully a happy one.
The Irish deer is the largest deer to have ever existed. It went into extinction approximately 7,700 years ago.
That's a long time.
Irish deer.
All right. The McDeer. Hey, thank you so much for listening. You've been listening to Native Roots Radio. We're still here. We are the 7th generation, and come back tomorrow and take a listen. We'll be back tomorrow.
Save free Leonard